Good day, my name is Phil Vincent and welcome to MDED, Multidimensional Education Incorporated. We are educators committed to data-driven educational solutions to provide you with systemic organizational research that will allow you to improve your schools and to have an impact on the learning and achievement of all students under your care. MDED consists of three primary partners. They are Dr. Michael Corrigan, Dr. Douglas Grove, and myself, Dr. Phil Vincent. We are educators who have various experiences. We have worked in universities, we have taught kindergarten through 12th grade, we have been site-based and central office administrators. In addition to that, we've also provided research for the U.S. Department of Education and many other organizations in assessing what they're doing to make improvements in their various fields. We are respected evaluators of various projects and also respected authors in multiple fields. We are committed to providing you with systemic organizational data that will allow you to improve your schools. Over the next few hours, you will find out how this can occur and how you can take advantage of MDED in meeting all of your educational needs. Why MDED? Why be here to learn about MDED? Well, we think that we have something that's a little different than what anyone else has. We think our approach is a little different, and also our approach is school-friendly in that people understand once they get the data on how to make a difference. We believe that having high-achieving schools and high-achieving students is a worthy goal, don't you? We want kids to achieve well. We want kids to reach their potential. And by the way, our view of achievement is test scores, is all that. That's important stuff. We can't ignore that. But how about artistic excellence in schools? How many of you know students who strive for artistic excellence? What about if you're at a vocational school, vocational excellence, where kids truly take pride in their craft? So we are a firm believer that we want excellence with kids. We want to know how best to improve student achievement in that broad parameter. How do we do it? How do we make this go? And we want to ensure that the performance of your students and schools is the highest it can be. What MDED does is that we take the guesswork out of knowing. You know what you know. And we think that's really important. You know what you know, and what you know is what is reality within your school. I'd like now to turn this over to Mike Corrigan, who would like to continue the discussion on the various dimensions of education that we assess through MDED.
If you look in the PowerPoint that we gave you, and you'll get a larger copy of this later, and we'll be going through these dimensions one by one throughout the whole day. If you look at these, we started out in this research about 8 years ago through some Department of Justice research on youth development and its attachment to community. And I started working with schools at that point and looking at things being multidimensional. They're dimensional in nature. And as we developed the character education grants, we asked people, well, what is character ed? What do people see? What do they think it is? And through our federal research, the U.S. Department of Ed, the Department of Justice, we came up with the fact that really it's good education when you start looking at a multidimensional model of things. Because there's not one thing we do in school that's the magic wand, is it? If that was the case, we'd all be here at 8:30 every morning having coffee with friends because we could go, ding, you know, our work is done here. It's 180 days a year, then some, of hard work. And we found out that teachers and administrators and parents and community people focus on about 7 dimensions that relate to good education, schools that are being very successful. And those 7 dimensions are community engagement. We'll go into community and as one of our 4 C's today. And what you look at in community is that there's every theorist you've been tortured with in education classes, right? Piaget, Vygotsky, all these folks. It's important. Okay, and we're going to go through that today with you. It makes an impact on how schools perform. Curriculum expectations. What we want to see is we're not looking at what curriculum you're using. We're helping you look at how your curriculum is perceived. How are your students feeling about it? How are you folks feeling about it? How are your parents feeling about it? And we think that's important because you can have a great curriculum, but if it's not being perceived or accepted or understood, it could be failing, right? So we want to help you with that perspective. Developmental perspectives is basically character. And what we want to do is help you look at the character of the school. And this focuses a lot on how the students behave, what they look like, what they do. Okay? Educational attitudes. Skinner, I'm a behaviorist at the end of the day, I'll warn you. I'm a quantoid, as my friends call me. I believe in numbers, and as Skinner once said, motivation is the key to learning. And we all know people who are very smart, kids, that could care less about taking a test. I've got nephews that are like that. They're brilliant. They're probably genius level, and they came home with A's and F's on their report card. That's motivation, folks. And we've got smart kids sitting there in front of us, and we know we can raise our test scores, and guess what? When we raise educational attitudes, test scores go up. So this is another dimension that we measure. Faculty fidelity. How are you doing? You know, how are you being perceived? And we don't individualize you folks out. They can't tell who you were or what you were or which teachers this or whatever. But teachers in the building, how are they being perceived? And there's some good news for you today, okay? So as I said, don't worry, because a lot of times when we find data, it's good news. I get evaluated all the time. I'm a professor, you know, and every semester I dread it. And I get them back, and out of the 50 that I look at, you know, 48 are wonderful, and 2 are the most evil people I hope to never see again. Okay? And it takes me a week of crying and margaritas, but I'm over it. All right? And what we look at is how can we improve on that? And we want to see how kids view us, how parents view us, how we view each other. Because even amongst educators, we have different opinions, don't we, on what's being done. Leadership in the building, Doug's going to build on some of this as well. Leadership in the building is paramount to success, and we've got a number of principals here today. And if the principal's not on board doing what they've been told or trained to do, nothing's going to succeed. You can have the greatest teachers, the greatest students, and if the principal's holding things back, nothing's going to go. And what we help schools do is look at how is the principal doing? How are they perceived? How are they communicating? Okay? There's a number of scales under each of these dimensions, 3 to 5 scales under each of these dimensions. We create indexes to measure these dimensions because one scale and one question is not enough. We want many questions on each scale and numerous scales to get an accurate measure of that dimension. The last dimension we go through is school climate, and Phil will be touching on climate later on this morning. It's his baby. He's written Restoring School Civility, a number of things on school climate, and it's so important to educational success. Because if you feel, I know I came from a not so good neighborhood growing up in my youth, and the school was a safe place for me. You know, I ran from home to the bus stop. I did not have that luxury of skipping around quite often. And I know when I walked in many of the schools I went to, that was the place for me to finally say, oh, you know, Mr. Hayes loves me, you know, I'll be all right today, right? And school climate, that's what that's about. How do we create a wonderful place for kids, and how do we create a great place for you to work so that you can relax and actually walk in the door every day smiling? Sound like an impossible goal? Okay. So what we're after is we have 7 dimensions. And what we found is when you combine these 7 dimensions, the great schools we have worked with, when we find these 7 dimensions are working, guess what we find? Academic challenges are lowered, okay? Academic achievement through the roof, okay? And that leads to successful schools. And what we do often is when we're studying a program or an intervention or a grant, that goes underneath these dimensions, and that's the